I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Commissioners, Town of Mint Hill, North Carolina for May 13th, 2021. We do have a quorum present. I'd like to ask Commissioner Long to lead us in our invocation, please.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to convene on a beautiful evening that you've given us. Give us wisdom and guidance as we serve this community. Lift up those that are hurting and comfort them. Please be with our law enforcement and fire department who never take a day off. They're always there for us. We ask this in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 on the agenda is additions, deletions, or arrangement of agenda items. I do have one addition under 5C to accept the resolution authorizing upset bid process for property located on Lebanon Road. You all have a copy of those probably in your packet in front of you. Have any further changes from staff? Any additions, deletions? Okay. Item number 4. Approval of the minutes of the April 8th, 2021 regular meeting and the April 6th, 2021 budget meeting. Let me start with the April 8th, 2021 minutes of the regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now to the April 6th, 2021 budget meeting.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both of those pass unanimously. Item number 5, the consent agenda. A, to accept the March and April tax collectors reports. B, to accept March's treasurer's reports and financials. C, to accept a resolution authorizing the upset bid process for the property located on Lebanon Road.
Motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion and exception. Any further conversation, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 6, public hearing on ZC 21-4 filed by the City of Charlotte Water to allow a rezoning from R to RCD to allow a new elevated water tank on a portion of parcel number 135-331-05, which is 12910 Palomino Drive. Is the applicant present?
Yes, the applicant is on the Zoom call, and they should be able to start the presentation on their end. Can you start your presentation on your end? See if this works.
Or are they doing a screen share from their side?
Mac, are you doing a screen share from your side?
Yes, sir. I can if I have I believe I can do that here.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. While we're getting the presentation pulled up, I'd just like to go ahead and do quick introductions and say good evening and thank you to the mayor and the town commissioners. My name is David Zur. I've been with Charlotte Water about 18 years. I'm deputy director over our engineering section. And I'm happy to be with you this evening to talk about this piece of infrastructure, this new elevated water storage tank. With us tonight, we've got our chief engineer, Mr. Carl Wilson, and then the project manager, Mac McClanahan, and Carl and Mac will go through most of the presentation. I'd just like to set a little background in that I remember looking at growth projections for the area, for the county and the towns going back probably 10 years ago, and comparing that to our water system and recognizing the need for additional elevated storage tanks. And they play a pretty vital role in the reliability and the distribution for our water system. And so this project, and we've got a couple of others in the works as well. But it's a critical piece of our infrastructure that would support the growth we're seeing today, as well as that goes into the next several decades. And so it is important. I'm glad to see that that we've anticipated that growth, and we're prepared to build the infrastructure to support it. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Carl and Mac. And again, thank you all for the opportunity to be here this evening.
All right, thanks, David. So as he mentioned, my name is Mac McClanahan. I'll be the project manager from Charlotte Water for these elevated storage tanks. Just one we're talking about in particular tonight in Mint Hill. Kind of just some background information on Charlotte Water if anybody's not that familiar with us. We currently have 3 water treatment plants, 5 wastewater treatment plants, with 11 elevated storage tanks to date that approximately hold about 20 million gallons across the county. And then you can see some similar other stats here on the side. A little over 4,000 miles of main line pipe in the county, which is pretty impressive. All right. All right. So the whole reason this need for this tank came about was it was identified in our 2015 water master plan from a consultant we have, and they identified a tank is needed in the 960 zone. And I kind of briefly brushed over that on the last slide here, but as you can see, the 960 zone is Matthews, Mint Hill, and the kind of surrounding area on the right corner of the county. So in the 2015 water master plan, they identified the need for this tank in this pressure zone in order to eliminate certain pressure fluctuations and control the storage in that 960 zone for the increasing growth, as kind of David mentioned. So currently today we're planning on our construction estimate or cost, or if you want to even call it a budget, is we're estimated around $6 million for construction, but we really don't plan to break ground until more than likely Q2 or summer of 2023. And and David kind of mentioned this a little bit as well. One of the major reasons that that we really need a tank in this area is because our storage and pressure fluctuations in this area are just need some help. So if people are unfamiliar with any elevated storage towers, basically the way they work is they pump up during the day and fill at night, or during the day when demands are high. So they pump up and fill up for the extra storage, and then they decrease down out. Or I said that backwards. I'm sorry. At night they pump up when the demand's low, and then during the day they release out to the public when the demands are obviously high. This tank is approximately 188 feet tall right now, is what our current kind of preliminary design shows, with 1 million gallons of capacity. And again, tanks are very much considered one of the most sustainable and energy efficient devices in the water treatment business, because it really takes very little energy to pump and fill it full, and then it allows flow to flow out to the community throughout the day with just via gravity. So that's a nice little piece about towers. So this is kind of more of the actual site that we've been discussing and we're looking at and talking with property owners about. It's the one with the actual red dot on it. And I got another slide here in a second that will kind of show a little bit more description. Obviously this is Highway 51 in Idlewild, and we're kind of looking, the Idlewild Baptist Church owned this entire section of property. And we have since then begun the talks of purchasing just a little section here, kind of cut out behind the food line. So here again, this was the church property over here in the ballparks, and obviously where it says shopping center is the food line that's currently there. So as a part of this project, what we'll have to do is run a 16-inch water line off of the main 16-inch on 51, and which is approximately 750, 800 feet from all the way from Idlewild to the connection to the tank. This site here is the current site. It's approximately 3 acres, with our total disturbed area being right around 1.25 acres. The total disturbed area is in the X marked here. Oops, sorry about that. And the kind of shaded section here is a 100-foot tree buffer that we're planning on maintaining, obviously, as well as the rest of the remaining trees on either side. If we go back to the slide here, you can see it's all just nice trees there. We only plan to clear and take out the trees for this section to build the tank. So the next couple slides show just kind of a Photoshopped images from the church parking lots there, the Ottawa Baptist Church, of what the tank will look off kind of in the background over the tree line. So this is from the northeast corner of the parking lot in the background. This is another view from the church parking lot as well. Kind of see it off in the distance here. And then from the Food Line parking lot in the background there. All right, so currently we're waiting on, obviously, Mint Hill Town approval and the rezoning of the property. We are waiting to close on the property. Hopefully that is soon. Our detailed design actually starts next week on the 3 tanks that we have as a part of this project, but in particular, Mint Hill, the one will start next week. And we're planning on the construction, as I mentioned earlier, planning on breaking ground on the site, maybe for some surveying and laying the water line, hopefully in the second quarter of 2023 is what I would like to shoot for. So yeah, I believe that's everything, unless Carl or David has a side note to add.
Yeah, Mac, thank you for giving that overview. I would like to add just a couple of little things for the commission to consider. So, the graphic that Mac showed, Mac, can you go back a couple of slides to
Sure.
that one right there?
Oh.
This is important to note, and Mac hit on it, but that grayed out area to the top left is just an indication of what the overall tree save would look like. So in other words, that X out area, and unfortunately, when we're sharing like this, you can't see our mouse is moving around, but you see the tank in the middle, that circle there. But then you have a rectangle around that. That's the cleared area. That's the area that we're planning on clearing. But everything else, we plan on leaving the trees. So that's very important, I'm sure, to the town and the surrounding residents.
Yep.
And just to know, there are very limited number of sites that meet the criteria that are outlined for us to be able to put in an elevated storage tank in this area. And when we talk about this area, we're talking about the area that's in the southeastern corner of the county. And unfortunately, like I said, there are only a handful of sites. And that meet the certain elevation and the site area that we're trying to achieve. So, and that have access to a large water main, so we can be able to fill and drain the tank like Mac mentioned. So that's why this site is it is our top site to go ahead and purchase and try to build this tank that will provide service for not just Mint Hill, but Matthews, portions of the south and the eastern part of Mecklenburg County as well. All right. So other than that, David, I'm not sure if you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, gentlemen, I think you did a good job kind of covering what the actual elevated tank is, and then the project scope and timeline. So at that point, I'd turn it back over to the mayor and commissioners to see if there's any questions or discussion.
Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioner Holton, do you have any questions?
Yeah, with this slide here, the part where you're having to run the main line, that's running to Matthews Mint Hill Road, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's coming in on the main entrance road that Food Line uses?
Yes, sir. That is Palomino Drive.
Okay.
Apologize for not mentioning that.
What's the impact going to be on that? Are they going to have to close that road down for a specific amount of time to run that line?
No, they will not have to close that road down. They may have to close temporarily a lane down, but they will not have to close the entirety of the road at any point.
Okay, so it's not going to affect any other businesses within there while
That's
the
correct.
construction is going on?
That's correct.
Okay. Other question I had was with that, If you go to the next slide that you had.
Yep.
Yep. Is that going to be graphicked with Mint Hill, welcome to Mint Hill on this water tower?
So that is currently up for discussion. I would like to let David answer that question if David would like to step in there.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. So historically, we have shied away from trying to put graphics, brand our tanks, in large part because they're, it might seem like they are painted, but I can tell you they're very expensive coatings on there, and the more you try to mix that up, it gets to be a maintenance intensive thing, and so we've intentionally tried to just do a light color and shy away from it. If that's something that the board, wants to consider, I think we would certainly be willing to, take a listen to what you all would like.
I personally, I mean, my thought is that being kind of one of the main gateways into town, it'd be a nice touch right there. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalton.
Patrick asked the questions I had. So I have
Commissioner
nothing.
Cochran.
Just I guess just a question about the life of a water tower. What was the expected usage or life of a water tower? I've seen some old water towers, but I just wondered, just out of curiosity more than anything else, what's the life of that water tower anticipated?
Sure. So we're estimating this one. We're designing it size wise for 30 years.
30.
That is a composite tank. Which is concrete. I've heard different stories from different people, but for the most part, they will say composite tanks can last up to 40 and 50 years. But the sizing of this tank is for 30-year growth. So that's what we're estimating.
Mac, if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of add to that and
Sure.
say I'm with you. I see a lot of old rusty water towers. A lot of that is the responsibility and the willingness to maintain them properly. And you will not see any of the Charlotte water tanks looking like that. And in fact, I would point to, if you ever go near Uptown there on the Brookshire 277 freeway past right there at Beatty's Ford Road,
Mm-hmm.
there's a water tank right off the edge there. And that's one of our 3 water treatment plants that dates back to the 1920s. It's our best water treatment facility. And that tank is an old steel tank that was riveted together from that time period. So from the 1920s, so it's 100 years old. And to me, it looks really good. And we have maintained that. We have an ongoing program in our capital investment plan that applies funds, and we basically just rotate around and we rehab one of these tanks. It's about every couple of years, and that keeps them on a 10 to 20 year cycle, which tends to keep up with the coatings and so forth. But under our watch, it will stay looking good.
Well, I probably won't be here 30 years from now, good Lord willing, but my grandkids, I'd hate for them to look up there and see a rusty tire with our name on it. But thank you for the information.
We will make sure it's not rusty.
I got you. Thank you.
Commissioner Long. Do we have anybody here to speak to the public hearing on ZC 21-4? Did we have anybody? No, sir. No, that's the one we're talking about on the water tower right now. I'll get you here in a minute. Did we have anybody present anything that they needed to enter into the record? With that being said, David, Matt, Carl, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate you being with us this evening. I would ask that in the next short period of time that you get together and have a conversation with our staff about the graphics on that tower. That's fairly important to us. And we'd like to see that happen and see what we need to do to make that happen. So,
Yes, sir.
but I certainly appreciate your presentation. Thank you all for being here. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing on ZC 21-4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is public hearing on ZC 21-5 filed by Souter Properties to allow a rezoning from R to IGCD to develop a new business park located at parcels number 137-151-20, which is 10905 Blair Road, and 137-151-22, which is 10821 Blair Road. The public hearing on that is now open. We understand we have somebody here to speak for the applicant, and I believe Mr. Souter is on Zoom as well.
Yes, and Mr. Souter, I'll run your Zoom presentation. So you just tell me when to hit forward.
Okay, this is basically the layout. We plan to line up the entrance with Connell Road directly across the street. That was with some input from NCDOT. We basically wish to have small office warehouse units. We've included some pictures of other projects we've done. We've done one very similar to this in Matthews on Independence next to the Golden Corral. They're very nice buildings. We have several of these types of units currently in Mint Hill over behind the Food Lion and behind where the old car wash used to be. And then also the old Willgrove Drum Building. We have several office warehouse units in the back of that. So it's not a terribly difficult project. We're very excited about it. We know there's a lot of demand. We have 100% occupancy in all of our current buildings. And I guess that's basically it. Sorry, my granddaughter's making a little noise in the background. I guess that was basically it. This does seem to be consistent with the land use plan for the property. And I think that's, we typically do not use metal exteriors. We typically use hardy board. And I think that's basically it.
Do you have something that you would like to add to that, sir?
I don't know that I need to add anything other than what Steve just mentioned.
Okay. With that being said, Commissioner Long, do you have any questions on this project?
No, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Cochran?
No, sir, not this time.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalton?
How many units were you looking at putting in there?
I apologize. I don't remember how many. There's probably, I'm just guessing off the top of my head, probably 40 or 45. They're 800 square foot units. Each one has an office, a bathroom, and then a small warehouse. Typically, the ceilings in them are about 16 foot high. But I apologize. I should know that.
That's
I don't
okay.
remember how many.
But it's all office space, any warehouse space?
No, it's office and warehouse. I'm sorry. It's about
Okay.
150 square foot office, a handicap restroom, and then the rest is a small warehouse, approximately probably 600 square foot warehouse. Typically, our tenants are people who are for the first time moving out of their home. Can be lots of different types of businesses, or maybe somebody that's currently renting a store, a mini storage, and they want their office and their storage space together. That's typically the type. We have probably close to 700 of these all around Charlotte.
And your exterior, did I hear you say it's going to be hardy board?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, that's all.
Commissioner Holton?
What kind of time frame are you looking at with this if everything goes through?
Well, to be honest with you, Denver, I think who's supposed to be there, Denver Toller, who's doing the engineering on it, he might know a little better as far as that. But I mean, we're ready to go with it as quickly as we can get the proper permits and approvals and the zoning, of course, to proceed with this. But I mean, I would hope within 6 months.
6 months completion or 6 months start?
I'm not sure how long this whole process is going to take as far as, the rezoning. I think that's another 30 or 60 days. And then engineering is probably, maybe start in 6 months, honestly. I don't know. We haven't done a project this size to date. Most of them have been a little smaller. So I would say probably start within about 6 months.
So you're looking to be able to open up for leasing 2022?
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Just my experience with new construction is it never goes exactly the way you plan.
Yeah, I got you. All right, thank you.
Sir, if you would step to the mic, please, and state your name and address for the record, please, and then we can all hear you. I understand. I apologize that we have to make you do that.
That's all right. Yeah, my name is Denver Toller. I'm the engineer for the project. I think what I was stating was that the engineering has already pretty much been completed. We had to do quite a bit just to get to this point. We are going to have to do some tweaking, of course, with the county and with the town and with Steve, just to get everyone on board and satisfied with the plans and where we're going from here. But that's about all I can tell you right now. The engineering has been generally completed, so we should be able to move ahead as soon as we get approval.
I'm good.
Do we have anybody here from the public that wants to speak to ZC 21-5? Did anybody present anything online that they wanted read into the record? The only thing that I would add is these questions are going to be asked of you guys again at the planning board. They're going to need those answers.
Okay.
And they're going to want very sharp and direct answers. When we ask numbers, they're going to want to know exactly how many.
Right.
And so we might prepare a little bit better for that. And I think that's probably, next Monday night, John? Yeah, so if you would, just make sure you have those answers for them at that time, please.
Right.
With that being said, I'm going to close the public hearing on ZC 21-5. Item number 8, public hearing on the Town of Mint Hill budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Town Manager Welch, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, I will read in the recommended proposed amounts for FY '22. Won't bore you with all the details, but obviously happy to answer any questions you may have. General Fund recommended at $23,682,017. That is maintaining the current tax rate of 25.5 cents and the vehicle fee to remain the same at $10. Powell Bill Fund in the amount of $740,000. Stormwater Fund in the amount of $537,149, which includes a proposed rate increase as follows: Tier 1, $1.35 per month; Tier 2, $2 per month; Tier 3, $3.09 per month; Tier 4, $5.20 per month; and commercial at $46 per acre of impervious area. Infrastructure Fund at $50, Police Forfeiture Fund at $50, and Tourism Fund at $277,150 for a grand total recommended for FY '22 of $25,236,416. Again, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We'll start. Commissioner Holton, do you have any questions, sir?
Number one, I appreciate all your work on this, making sure we don't have a tax increase.
Thanks, sir.
I appreciate that, only as a citizen, but going through, I know there was some funding added in there for, like with Parks and Rec and the building of that park on Brief Road.
That's correct.
Is it my understanding too that it's been pretty well confirmed that there will be a dog park?
Obviously, the design will be up to you guys when we bring that back to you. We're fortunately enough that park project will be pared down enough that internal staff can actually do the design work. But as contemplated at the retreat, that funding does include a dog park. Again, subject to you guys' final approval.
Perfect, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalton,
No questions.
Commissioner Cochran,
No, fine. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Long.
No, sir.
Do we have anybody from the public that's here to speak as far as the Mint Hill budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022? Do we have anybody send anything that they want read into the record? Thank you for all your work, sir. Appreciate all the long hours that's required to put that together. With that being said, we will close the public hearing on the Town of Mint Hill budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Item number 9 is general public comments. Do we have anybody here present this evening that would like to speak to the board? Did we have anything presented through emails or anything else? Okay. Public comment session is closed. Item number 10, Tourette Syndrome Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas Tourette syndrome is an inherited neurological disorder that is characterized by involuntary physical and vocal tics that occur many times a day, and whereas Tourette syndrome is often accompanied by other mental health disorders such as attention deficit and obsessive compulsive disorder, learning disabilities, and anxiety. And whereas Tourette syndrome and tic disorders affect 1 in 100 children, more than 22,800 school-aged children in the state of North Carolina alone are dealing with Tourette syndrome, and although some of these cases are aided by medication, there is no standard treatment or known cure for the disorder. And whereas there is an important need for more professional help with interest and expertise to identify, counsel, and treat people with Tourette syndrome, a disorder that is often misdiagnosed and misunderstood. And whereas positive action to assist children and families living with Tourette syndrome would result from a broadening of public and professional knowledge and acceptance of Tourette syndrome. And whereas the Tourette Association Greater Carolinas Group are actively providing services to families, educating medical professors and teachers, and supporting research to better understand and sign and treatment of TS. Now therefore be it resolved that May 15th through June 15th, 2021 will be recognized as Tourette Syndrome Awareness Month in Mint Hill, North Carolina, to promote understanding, compassion, and acceptance for all of our fellow citizens who deserve and need our support to break the stigma that surrounds Tourette syndrome. Witness my hand and seal of the town of Mint Hill this 13th day of May, 2021. Brad Simmons, Mayor. Item number 11, discussion on ZC 20-10 filed by NVR Incorporated to allow a conditional district rezoning from R to RD-A CD to allow a residential development located at parcels numbers 135-381-67, which is 10524 Lawyers Road, 135-381-66, which is 10600 Lawyers Road, 135-381-64, 10616 Lawyers Road, and 135-381-65, 10608 Lawyers Road. This has been withdrawn by the applicant. Item number 12, discussion and decision on ZC 21-3 filed by the town of Mint Hill to amend section 7.2 street lighting standards of the downtown code. John?
Thank you, sir. The purpose of the text amendment is to clarify in the code an existing policy requirement regarding the responsibility of the developer to pay the upfront one-time decorative charge for the pedestrian lights required in the downtown. The planning board met on April 19th and had a favorable recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Commissioner Long?
No, sir.
Commissioner Cochran?
No, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalton?
No.
Commissioner Holton?
No, sir.
Hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 13, adopt a resolution authorizing the police chief to enter into law enforcement mutual assistance agreements with other law enforcement agencies. Whereas North Carolina General Statute 160A-288 promotes cooperation between law enforcement agencies by authorizing the head of any law enforcement agency to temporarily provide assistance to another agency in enforcing the laws of North Carolina if so requested in writing by the head of the requesting agency. And whereas the assistance may comprise allowing officers of the agency to work temporarily with officers of the requesting agency in lending equipment and supplies. And whereas, while working with the requesting agency under the authority of this statute, an officer shall have the same jurisdiction, powers, rights, privileges, and immunities as the officer of the requesting agency, in addition to those they normally possess. And whereas, while on duty with the requesting agency, the officer shall be subject to the lawful operational command of their superior officers in the requesting agency. But for personnel and administrative purposes, the officer shall remain under the control of their own agency, including for purposes of pay. And whereas an officer shall be entitled to workman's compensation and the same benefits when acting pursuant to law enforcement assistant agreement to the extent as though they were functioning within the normal scope of their duties. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mint Hill Town Council designates the police chief of the town of Mint Hill as the head of the town's police department, as the term is used in North Carolina General Statute 160A-288, and the said police chief is hereby delegated authority to make or grant pursuant to this statute. Be it further resolved that the police chief of the town of Mint Hill is hereby authorized to enter into agreements for exchanging law enforcement officers' equipments or supplied with the provisions of North Carolina General Statutes 16A-288, adopted this 13th of May, 2021. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If not, I'm going to ask the police chief to come forward and accept this, please. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you. Item number 14 is presentation from Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, which those of us who deal with them a lot, it referred to as CARPO. And we have Mr. Robert Cook here with us today. And you will have to tell me your title and all the things that you do, because after watching you perform for 2 years, I'm not sure you're getting all the credit that you deserve. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. And thank you, all the members of the Board of Commissioners for having me here tonight. I appreciate the help that Steve Fry provided me in getting on the agenda this evening. My name is Bob Cook. I work for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, as the mayor said. And we are a regional transportation planning organization that I wanted to give you an update on what we do and how we go about doing the work we do. So do I have to turn this on, right? Here we go. What I wanted to do tonight, really, and to make those explanations, I wanted to do it in about 3 or 4 ways. One is to just give you an overview of what a metropolitan planning organization is, and of course go into the details on CRTPO, talk about our responsibilities, what programs and plans we're responsible for, talk about some regional initiatives we're involved with, some we lead, some we participate in. Then talk about our discretionary projects program, a good funding opportunity for the town and all the jurisdictions within our planning area, and then of course leave any time for comments and questions that the board members might have. Are you advancing, Lee, or it's not advancing? Oh, there you go. There you go. Great, thank you very much. Sorry, I think I did turn it off. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a metropolitan planning organization actually is. MPOs are federally designated transportation planning organizations that are required in any urban area that exceeds 50,000 in population. And of course, our area exceeded that threshold many, many years ago. And to give you a little bit of context too, there are about 400 similar organizations throughout the U.S. So quite a few throughout the nation. Some are much, much bigger than ours. In California, they can be huge organizations with many responsibilities, and some can be quite small, just over that 50,000 threshold. And New Bern, North Carolina is a good example of that. They're just barely over that 50,000 threshold. MPOs came about starting back in 1962 through the Federal Aid Highway Act, where that first required an urban transportation planning process, largely out of some concerns about how some of the interstate highways were being built in the U.S. And then in the 1970s, MPOs were formally created to make sure that that vision for an urban transportation planning process from 1962 was actually being implemented. So go back a while now, and the CRTPO or its predecessors, and this name hasn't been used forever. It really originated in 2013. It was MUMPO for many years, the Mecklenburg Union Metropolitan Planning Organization, and I'm not sure what it was called before that, but the organization in one form or another or under some name has been around since the late 60s, early 70s. So more specific to us here in this region, very simply, the CRTPO or CARTPO is that federally designated MPO for the Charlotte urbanized area. And our planning area includes all of Mecklenburg County, all of Iredell County, and most of Union County, and I'll show a map in a moment. And federal funding is contingent upon a metropolitan planning organization, or federal funding for transportation is dependent upon an MPO implementing what's called the 3C process. That's a continuing process, one that's constantly going on. It's not like we meet just once a year or something along those lines. It's cooperative, that we have a number of member jurisdictions. Of course, the town of Mint Hill is certainly one of those. And then it's comprehensive, and then it takes in all modes and all the issues affecting transportation planning. So the map there depicts our planning area, as I mentioned, all of Mecklenburg and all of Iredell counties. And you can see most of Union County, at least where most of the people live. Those two areas that are outside our jurisdiction are planned for by the Rocky River Rural Planning Organization. And those areas are quite rural, as I think probably most of you know. Our land area is about 1,560 square miles. As of the 2010 population, 2010 census, our population was about 1.4 million. We'll get new numbers relatively soon, and I'm sure that number of the population will increase in some way. In terms of membership, we have 21 cities and towns within our planning area who are active members. There are a number of other cities and towns who don't participate. Some very small towns, for example, Love Valley and Harmony in Iredell County are very, very small communities, and just say basically to Iredell County, we don't have the staff for this, you cover it for us. We have the three counties, of course. The North Carolina Board of Transportation participates, as does the Metropolitan Transit Commission. We have two main committees, our CRTPO board that the mayor serves on, and then our technical coordinating committee, which Steve Fry of your staff serves on, and they provide technical recommendations to the board when it has to take action on any item. And of course, a major partner in all this is the North Carolina Department of Transportation. They own most of the network we drive around on, and they need to be at the table and fully participating, and they are active participants in what we do. There are a number of required planning products that we're responsible for. In fact, really most of what we do is embedded in either federal or state law. So there's not a lot of leeway in terms of what we do, leeway in how we do it, but most of what we are charged with is embedded in law. And so we're responsible for coordinating transportation policy for all our member jurisdictions. And that's important because we're responsible for allocating federal transportation dollars to transportation projects throughout our area and making sure that those dollars are spent in accordance with federal policy, keeping in mind, again, that we are a creation of the federal government. In terms of the responsibilities, I won't go through each item there on that chart, but there are some critical ones. At the top at 12 o'clock, there is just our budget, our Unified Planning Work Program. Much like you heard about yours tonight, we've actually adopted one already for the next fiscal year because of certain state rules, but it's basically our budget. The Metropolitan Transportation there at 3 o'clock. I'll go into that a little bit more later on, but one of our most critical projects or programs, in fact, probably the most critical one, the Transportation Improvement Program, is where dollars are programmed for projects. So these are projects start becoming real at that stage when they're programmed in the TIP, as we call it. Then there's the public involvement plan. Public involvement is critical to what we do so people understand what's going on. We can always do better with that. We always strive to do better, but that is a critical aspect and very clear in all federal regulations that govern what we do. Then there's one outlier on the list, and that's the comprehensive transportation plan there at 1 and 2 o'clock on that chart. And the reason it is an outlier is that it's a requirement of the state of North Carolina. North Carolina general statutes require an MPO to maintain a comprehensive transportation plan. These plans go out 50-plus years, and there's a significant difference between that comprehensive transportation plan and the metropolitan transportation plan that I'll get to in a second. Very much linked, but different at the same time. So that gives you a feel for some of the responsibilities of the organization, and I'll get into a few more details. We did have a video. It looks like it's probably not going to play. It's about 3 minutes long, and we can send you the link, but it sums up the relationship between those three plans or programs. The Comprehensive Transportation Plan, again, that goes out 50 years plus, totally unconstrained. It's your wish list. As this region builds out, that is the picture of what we want the transportation network to look like to serve all that development. So it's very big picture. The MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, that has a horizon of 20 years. So you start prioritizing projects at that point. So you're taking them from maybe a little bit on the fantasy side at that CTP level, 50 years out, and really starting to make them more real. And then when you get to that TIP stage, which is a 10-year document, or the Transportation Improvement Program, that's when projects start becoming real, and there are real dollars associated with those projects. So that's how those three plans work together. I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, in part because we're involved in a major update of that document right now. This is our long-range plan. As I said before, it's probably our most important document. We update it every 4 years. And unlike that comprehensive transportation plan, this is fiscally constrained. In other words, it's not a wish list. An MPO has to establish that it has the money, or anticipates the money, I should say, for the projects it plans to put into its long-range plan. The update that we're working on right now will go out to the year 2050. So we have to be able to prove that based upon reasonable assumptions, we'll have the money to build the projects that we hope to put into the plan. So this plan establishes our priorities for the next 20 years. Not to say things can't change. They will. They always do. We can amend the plan. But this is the roadmap we have for transportation improvements over that time period, 20 years plus out to 2050. And to get a little bit more information about our plan, you see the website up there, 2050mtp.org. So I hope you'll take a look at that, and I'll have a little bit more information about how to get involved as well. But in terms of timeline, you can see there that we started this endeavor in July of last year. So we're getting close to a year into it. And we're about maybe close to midway through that. We're up to that project prioritization process right now. The mayor has heard about this several times over the past few meetings we've held, and we'll likely get into a public outreach campaign about a draft list of projects coming up probably in June, if all goes as planned. So we're roughly at that stage now, and then we are aiming for March 2022 for adoption of the updated plan. So a little bit more information, as I said, about how to stay involved. There's our website there. We have our Facebook page, a Twitter page. We have a toll-free hotline where you can call in, and anyone else can call in who might not feel comfortable with English. We have all those languages that people can leave a message in, and they'll get a response in the language with with which they're most comfortable. Our next opportunity for input will actually be a survey coming out. I'm hopeful by the end of the month. And then that June, July timeframe for the public involvement on that draft priority list for roadway projects specifically. So we did have a call for projects, candidate roadway projects earlier this year. We received 240 submittals for potential inclusion in the plan. And as you can see there, the lion's share came from Mecklenburg County. No surprise, Mecklenburg County is about 73% of the planning area's population, but a sizable number of projects from Iredell County and Union County as well. About 3/4 of them were for road widening purposes, that 177 projects there, and about 20% or thereabouts were for roadways on new location. And then you have projects for new interchanges and new or improvements to existing interchanges and intersections. That should read, so that includes both. So, and that has remained steady over the years. Most of our proposed improvements are for roadway widening. And as you can see how they're spread throughout the planning area, that might be a little bit difficult for folks in the audience, but members of the board, you can see there is a line on the mapway in the northern reaches of Iredell County, all the way out to Marshville in Union County. So a good geographic distribution of the candidate projects that are being evaluated right now. And again, will be coming out for public review next month. So we have, most critically in that phase 3 area, the draft project list. I'd ask everyone to pay attention to that and to provide us with comments and feedback when that time begins. We really need to hear the public's thoughts on what's been submitted by all the cities and towns. So that's one point that I did overlook. These are all coming from all our member jurisdictions. These are not staff-driven, CRTPO staff-driven projects. They're town staff-driven projects. So that's where they all originate. So hopefully there's been a lot of coordination on all those before they're submitted. They all won't make it into the fiscally constrained plan. Last time we did this 4 years ago, things were quite rosy. And we could have put in everything we wanted, or so it seemed. Things aren't quite so rosy this time around. So there's going to be a little bit more red in our plan this time around than there was 4 years ago, I'm afraid. Times do change. One thing I wanted to get into was one sort of shift in direction, or maybe just a new direction for us in some ways, and that's about transit planning. 2 years ago, this month, as a matter of fact, we completed a staffing and resources study. And one of the clearest items that came out of that study was for us to start doing more transit planning. We hadn't really done any of that at all. We relied upon CATS to do that for us. We took what CATS gave us, we plugged it into our plan. It was all nice and neat that way. But the board said, no, you need to be doing more of that. And in that study, it was very clear you needed to hire a transit planner. And we did that. Jarrell Leonard started with us in January of last year. We've become actively involved in the Link Silver Line project, the Connect Beyond initiative, and the Transit Education Initiative Task Force, and I'll go into those very briefly. I think a lot of you are familiar with the Link Silver Line project, stretching from Belmont and Gaston County to Indian Trail and Stallings in Union County. And Jarrell is on the project management team, and I believe CATS is still on track for adoption of a locally preferred alternative alignment sometime coming up, maybe in May or June. We will have to amend our comprehensive transportation plan to include that, so that's how CRTPO is involved in this. And then it may be included in our 2050 MTP. It's unclear at this point if that's going to be the case, but it may. And then as an organization, we have to have, along with CATS, of course, conversations with the folks in Union County and Gaston County. How are we going to get this funded, not just in Mecklenburg County, but into those two adjoining counties? It's not an easy task in Mecklenburg, but Union and Gaston don't have a half-cent sales tax or anything of that sort, so we have to be involved in that process with them. And then there's, again, the Connect Beyond initiative. I hope a lot of you are familiar with that. That's the effort to create a regional transit vision for this region. Over 12 counties, as you can see on the map depicted there. And its goal is to create that single coordinated vision for transit in this region. And CRTPO has been actively involved with this. We were a major funder of this initiative, and I'm serving on the project management team. And then what's going to happen next, and this process should be wrapping up in the fall, by the way. The MPOs throughout the region are going to be responsible, with CATS, of course, for implementation. We have to figure out how to not make this plan be one of those plans that sits on the shelf and everyone congratulates themselves after it's been done, but then it doesn't go anywhere. The MPOs are going to be responsible for helping to make it go somewhere. And then there are some process things we'll have to do about amending our comprehensive transportation plan in some way. And it's not all about light rail or commuter rail. It's also about just mobility in general. And one of the biggest things about this initiative that I'm happy about is that it's working with some of the other transit agencies in the region, the Concord and Kannapolis Transit Agency, I can't remember the name, the Gastonia Transit Agency, and the smaller ones too, the human service agencies, transportation agencies. And so they're looking at that in a very profound way. It's not just all about trains. That gets all the attention. That's what sells, I don't know if they sell too many newspapers anymore. I guess I'm dating myself. But that's what gets the headlines. That's what gets on the evening news. But it's a whole lot more than just trains. And then the last item I wanted to talk about on transit was this Transit Education Initiative Task Force. And this is one of the first things that started after we hired our transit planner. And this is all involving how we allocate dollars that come from the Federal Transit Administration to the 4 agencies in our planning area. It's not just CATS, but it's also ICATS, might be a new one for you, the Iredell County Area Transportation System, the Union County Transportation System, and Mecklenburg Transportation Systems. They're all the receivers of this Section 5307 funds is the name that you can see there on the slide. So what we hope to do, and this has been a very long process that's been underway, we hope to present to the board in June a recommendation on how to change how those dollars are allocated, and then action by the board in July. So it's been a very long process, but it's developed helped us develop good relationships with those 3 smaller agencies that we really didn't deal with in the past. And the last item I wanted to cover tonight was about our discretionary program. This program supports a lot of relatively small projects that can really help improve a community's transportation network. On average, we allocate about $26 million in discretionary funds each year, and we allocate those to many local projects. And these funds originate really from 3 federal sources and 1 state source. So I have a slight error there on that slide, I apologize. But you can see the Surface Transportation Block Grant, the Transportation Alternatives Program, and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, all federal sources of funding. And then that last one, bonus allocation, is actually a state funding source. Bonus allocation funds are an incentive provided through North Carolina for regions that take on tolling projects. So we got bonus allocation funds for the I-77 North project, the express lanes there that created quite a bit of controversy, but we did get $144 million of extra funding out of that project. And then for the I-45 project that's underway now, I don't recall the exact number, it was substantially less than the 77 project, but still it helps support a number of local projects. And you can see here how that turned out with our most recent call for projects, at least for new projects, our fall call from 2020. That resulted in 11 projects across 9 jurisdictions being funded. We had $34 million to allocate this time around because of those bonus allocation funds. We had a little bit more than that $26 million I mentioned earlier. We also funded $293,000 in transportation planning studies, and you can see listed there the 4 projects that we funded through that. So it's not just about capital projects, but it can also be about the work necessary to get to those capital projects. For example, that Mooresville to Charlotte Trail that the city of Charlotte is sponsoring, looking how there can be we can build a trail from Center City, Charlotte, through North Meck into Mooresville in Iredell County. We have a call for projects coming up beginning in August. This is our fall call. It'll start in August but wrap up in October when all the project proposals will be due. And we have our project oversight committee will look at those projects during November and December. They'll come to the board in January or February of 2022 for approval, and then NCDOT will amend its state transportation improvement program to fully fund those projects and to get them underway. So I mentioned this tonight. I'd urge the town of Mint Hill to take a look at this program. It might be an opportunity to fund some projects. They're usually relatively small scale projects, admittedly. It's not like we're funding a widening of an interstate or something along those lines, but if you have a pedestrian improvement that's vital in the community, or a bicycle project that's vital, or an intersection improvement, or maybe a relatively small scale one, but it can provide great benefits even on a small scale. Or if there's a planning project, a transportation planning project that the town is interested in, I'd encourage you to take a look at this and consider applying for these funds during this fall call. These are not, these dollars come with some strings. One is a 20% match. That's fairly standard with federal funds, so it's not free money, but 20 cents on the dollar, that's not necessarily the worst deal in the world. So again, I'd encourage the town to take a look at this and see if it can take advantage of it during the fall call. We'll do it again the following year too, if you're not ready this time around, of course. Just one quick thing, we're wrapping up a spring call right now. That is designed to help support any existing projects that are experiencing shortfalls. So we do have those. Costs are going up exponentially. And so a lot of times you develop a cost estimate with the best of intentions, but you find it just isn't working anymore. A lot of times it's right-of-way costs that are really hurting a lot of projects these days. So those are the items I wanted to cover tonight to give you kind of an overview of what we do, our role in the transportation planning process in the region, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have tonight.
Commissioner Holton, we'll start at that end. I'm sure you absorbed all that.
I've got nothing.
Oh, come on.
Interesting, but I've got nothing. Very interesting.
Dalton.
Thank you for the presentation. I, like Brad, will watch you monthly on Zoom, so good to see you in person.
Nice to see you.
You're talking about this discretionary funds. Could that be for like widening of a highway too, for an intersection?
Sure, absolutely. It can be used for that. You know, we have 26 million to spread around a large area, so it might not be the full funding for something like that. So in some cases, some towns provide a 50% match of funds, and that actually gives you a bit of a boost in our ranking methodology. But certainly can go to support an intersection improvement or a widening of a roadway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Cochran.
A lot of good information, thank you. And just got one thing that sort of stuck out in my mind when you looked at your chart a few minutes ago. Public involvement plan. I know the more I'm in this position and the more we try to get the public involved in what, giving us direction. Exactly what does Carpo do with public involvement plan? Is there a board of people that's on that? Is it a committee? How do you get those people involved when you say a public involvement plan?
We have a public involvement plan. We don't have a separate board that governs that or anything. The policy board that Mayor Simmons sits on would really govern that in essence. But really what it's all about is just making sure that we're getting information out there, so folks can make a decision as to whether or not they're interested. You know, it's really about making things available. A lot of times people won't be interested, and long-range transportation planning, it's hard to grab people's attention. This was not just because of the pandemic or anything of that sort, but when you tell somebody you're working on a 2050 plan, I mean, if I had a dime for every time I saw someone's eyes glaze over, I'd be a very wealthy man. It's hard for people to grasp 2050. It's hard for me to grasp 2050 at times, but and I may not be around in 2050, and that's, you know, it's because, and when you think about it in that sense, it can be a little like, well, why should I care? But it can be very challenging at times. Now, if you have a project, that's when people will come out, of course, and we found that out with the I-77 Express Lanes project. I mean, out of the woodwork came out. But you know what? We got somebody said there's no such thing as bad publicity. Our name got out there a little bit more, so people are a little bit more aware of what it is that we do. So I think that was a benefit. But it's just public involvement is an ongoing thing that we have to tend to. We got a crash course in it because of the pandemic and the shutdown last March. We had a scramble in March, just a few days before our March board meeting. How are we going to hold this meeting? And I think we did a pretty good job of switching over to a virtual environment within maybe about 3 or 4 business days notice. And that's actually worked to our advantage. We have more people attending our monthly board meetings virtually than we ever had in person. And this is just a regular board meeting. This isn't where there's maybe something controversial on the agenda. I think it was last month we had 70 people participating, which, I mean, to get 70 people attending one of our meetings at the government center downtown, I can't imagine that ever happening unless there was something really controversial on the agenda. So it's actually worked to our advantage in some way. I guess there's always a silver lining to every dark cloud.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Long? No, sir. I've got one. I would normally mention it to you at a side before we started a meeting or after a meeting, but since I've been looking at you at this box for so long and I've got you in the room, I'm going to ask you about something. A lot of these other towns around here have hired transportation planners that work with this stuff every day, and they understand a little bit better than they do. Mint Hill has not got to the point yet where we have got a transportation planner in our budget, even though it's presented tonight, and I didn't see him in there, so I assume this is going to be another year that we don't have one. As you know, we were fortunate enough to get some matching funds on some sidewalk work, about $3 million total on the matching funds with federal government, so $1.5 million each. We now have an engineer who's having to figure out how to fill out this paperwork to keep the federal government happy. Mm-hmm. Who in your office can I tell him to call, coordinate with, and get all the help that we absolutely need to work through this process?
We hired last February. We had to replace a staff member, and we got an absolute gem. Her name is Jennifer Stafford. She knows contracts. She understands the minutia associated with contracts and some of the federal regulations. She will be the perfect person. If you want to, I can get you her, I'll send you her contact information tomorrow morning, her direct phone number, email address. But I think she'll be able to set them straight and get them on the right path.
Perfect. We just want to make sure we dot all those I's and cross all those T's, because we don't want to end up.
You don't want that.
Don't want to end up missing our matching funds on that.
No.
Bob, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming out to Mint Hill.
My pleasure.
Just if you don't mind, tell these guys how many staff people you have that are doing all this in your.
We actually, when I first started, there were 3 of us.
Right.
Life was a lot simpler in 2004. Now we have 10 people doing
Yeah, 10 people doing all this, so they're quite busy all the time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the board. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other business and council members. Commissioner Long?
Not really. I would like to make a comment of thanking our police and fire. It seems like the last 30 days, we've had a lot of activity in our community. Had breakfast with an officer this morning, and he said he spent 5 hours yesterday directing people to a fuel pump and keeping the roads open so the motoring public. And you could tell there was a bit of anxiety there, just dealing with the public and their anxiety. So thank you guys for what you do. We've had a couple of structure fires here recently. So it's amazing what I see in the community, and we're going to see more of it with the more rooftops we have. Thank you, guys.
Commissioner Cochran?
I'll just echo it real quick, what he said. I've noticed that the police have been out checking traffic more on top of everything else they have to do. And thank you very much. Chief, Fire Department has done a fantastic job. They're still first on any accident, and well, thank you. I just ditto what you said. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I'll echo what Tony has also said, this being National Police Week and recognizing you all. Last Saturday before last, they had a speed set up here on 51, and it was marvelous. I don't know, I mean, it was just like one after the other, pulling them over. And as many complaints as we've had in town about speeding, this will definitely help it. Thank you.
Commissioner Holton?
I have no business or council matters to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm not going to piggyback on all that. I just will tell you one thing, Chief, that the guy that in the red pickup that sat in that line for 30 minutes yesterday while your officers directed him off the road is very appreciative of that. And there was no favoritism shown. I waited in line with the rest of them. So they're not only doing a good job, but they're not taking care of anybody in any particular order as well. So any other business from staff? Mr.
Yes.
Yes. I was going to get to that side of the room eventually, but we're going to get it all the way across the room, so that's good. Thank you, Lee. Chief Lee?
Appreciate the kind words.
Chief Hadley?
Appreciate everything. Thank you.
If we don't have any other comments, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are hereby adjourned. Thank you.